Welcome in, everybody. It is another celebratory time to be a Rockets fan. Basically, this was a game. Rockets win in overtime, 117 to 113 over the Orlando Magic. A game that I don't know if you feel the same way, Ben, that the Rockets probably had lost. We thought it was over a couple of different times. Orlando, despite not having Paolo Banchero, not having Jalen Suggs, pretty much took it to the Rockets for most of the game. And Kevin Durant just came on strong. Alperen Sengun made big plays. Jabari had a big play. Lots of heroes come through, and the Rockets, their number one offensive rating might take a beating, but they pull off the win and are now 9-3.
Well, as you can tell, if you're watching the video stream by the gear I've got on, I was there as a fan tonight, and I'll be honest, that was one of the craziest sports fan experiences I've ever had. Like, clearly not the magnitude in terms of the importance of the win, but the last time I remember those types of emotional swings at a game that I was at was the 2022 ALDS Game 1 Jordan walk-off against the Mariners. Like, I have not seen since then that many back and forth swings in a game where both teams were making big plays. I guess, that Sixers game last year was sort of crazy that they won in overtime around St. Patrick's Day, but that was a terrible Sixers team. Like, a lot of that was just the Rockets, playing with their food and then rescuing it late. I guess you could argue that tonight with the Magic missing Paolo Banchero, but honestly, I give the Magic a lot of credit. Like, Franz Wagner, Desmond Bane, there are some good players on that team. And I thought, they defended the Rockets in a very unique way. They basically dared Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun to beat them one-on-one. And it was so different. After Friday's game against Portland, we talked about the Rockets finally figuring out the three-point math discrepancy. They put up 45 compared to 36 for the Blazers. Tonight, it went to the other extreme. It was so tough for the Rockets to get off threes because the Magic didn't have to double. Well, maybe there were times they should have doubled, but they were okay giving up those middies to Alperen Sengun, to Kevin Durant, if the Rockets weren't going to be able to get off threes, if they could squeeze the Rockets on the perimeter. And for a lot of the game, it worked. I think what the Rockets needed to get over the hump in this game was to, not entirely rely on the middies, go all the way to the bucket, finish through contact, get some free throws. And it's tough to do that over 48 minutes. But I think in the final 8-9 minutes of the fourth quarter and in overtime, we saw that a bit more from Kevin Durant, especially Alperen Sengun. And I think that's what got them over the finish line. So in terms of the big picture, there's things they've got to work out because, you can't be at the 3-point disadvantage they were tonight and win a ton of games, at least against good competition. Now, I think there's also an argument to be made that the Magic, because they do have a lot of size, there's a lot of big physical wings, that they are more capable of holding their own one-on-one against players like Sengun and KD than most teams around the league. And, I think back under the whole Ime Udoka regime of the Rockets, they've had some trouble with the Magic in the past. I think this is a matchup because of the physicality they play with, and obviously the Rockets missing not just Dorian Finney-Smith, but now Tari Eason as well, don't have the length across the board that they typically do. So there's a few factors going on here, but I think at a very high level, what happened throughout the game was the Magic dared Sengun and KD to beat them one-on-one, and for the first 40 minutes or so, it was enough to keep the Rockets close, but not put them over the top. When it really mattered, Sengun and KD found that extra gear, and it was enough to get them one of the wildest wins I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was the exact takeaway that I had. They single covered Sengun. They could do so with Franz Wagner. This is again coming on the heels of Avdia kind of guarding Sengun for stretches against Portland. And then, of course, Wendell Carter did it as well. I mean, there's times when they're going to bring some help, but that was a key factor because obviously so much of what the Rockets do is when Sengun gets doubled, somebody's open. He's so good at finding a matter of fact, in regulation, when they were coming back, Jabari hit a really big basket out of the corner.
Again,
it was because Sengun read that double so fast. He read the help coming off of Jabari in the corner. He knew Jabari was open. And it was one of the few times that Sengun got that double and he kicked out. I don't want to put any negative spin on it. I'm a little concerned that people will pick up on this because this is something we've talked about before, but there's a lot of, not many teams can have players that can single cover Sengun. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But Kevin Durant tonight, as far as the positives, 13 of 24 from the field, 35 points. is just continuing his heater that he is on right now. And he is clearly the closer. He's the guy they want to get the ball to make the big shot. And it's something that they've been lacking in the past. I mean, you go back and look at that Warriors series, it really, they didn't have that last year. And so that's the big bonus right now, or the best thing going on with the Rockets right now is KD is truly that closer for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want this to come across as a shot at Jalen Green, but on some of those big shots down the stretch, I couldn't help but think, what if it was Jalen Green instead of Kevin Durant, i.e. last year's model? And the Rockets wouldn't even have been close, in my opinion, to winning this game. And again, that's not meant to be a criticism of Jalen. He is a good player, but Kevin is a great player. And we saw that tonight, even at 37 years old. And his propensity to deliver when it matters most, I mean, for me, that's one of the most rewarding parts of the past week. I think what was really frustrating, the way the Rockets started this season, yes, in the macro, it was understandable that you lost 2 close games to the Thunder and the Pistons, who I think still have the 2 best records in the league. So it's not like those were bad losses by any means. But the Rockets are a team going into the year, you would like to think, hey, if a game is close, Houston should disproportionately benefit from executing down the stretch when it becomes a half-court game because of the types of half-court creators and playmakers that they have. It didn't start that way, but boy, is it trending in that direction over the last couple of weeks, really starting with that Dallas game where the Mavs played them super close for about 3 quarters, and the Rockets, starting with KD and it ended with Sengun, had to sort of tap into that extra gear to get it to the finish line. They're not a finished product. The Rockets will be the first to admit that, but I think going into this season, this was on paper what should have been, and I think is one of their biggest strengths. If it's close, they have the types of individual talents that can get them to the finish line in a way that most of their opponents don't. And even the Magic, like Desmond Bane, Franz Wagner, those are very good players. I don't think they're in the tier of Kevin Durant or Alperen Sengun. I think there's a little bit of a gap there, and I think ultimately that was the difference when it mattered most tonight. And again, for a Rockets team that struggled a little bit early in the season to close out games, it's really rewarding in the past couple of weeks to see that it's flipping in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting tonight. We talked about this team being the number 1 in offensive rating. They have been so incredibly good offensively. You do lose Tari, as you mentioned. He's out for 4 to 6 weeks. For anyone who hasn't already picked up on that news, he didn't play tonight. Obviously, starting this stretch where he's out. Jabari wasn't exactly hot. Sengun started the game hitting 2 like 18-foot bombs, turnarounds, like tough shots, and you're like, man, this guy has really taken a leap with his shooting. And then really offensively struggled. I think he went during one stretch, had missed like 9 of 10 shots. He was 11 of 31, so scored 30 on 31 shots tonight, but came up with some big hero plays. We'll go through that for sure. But I have to talk about the end of regulation, Ben. I'm going to play the clips. There's too many highlights tonight to get all of this stuff in there. But the end of regulation was just crazy. I mean, I don't really know where to start here. This is where KD just hits a huge basket to tie it. And the Rockets had been just taking the lead with maybe 3 minutes left in the game. Their first, I don't know if it was the first lead in a long while. Then Sengun stays in the game. I was shocked by this defensively because it was a key defensive position. Play. And he has a huge block. And then right here, I'm going to pause it for a second, Ben, because I got to set this up. Rockets have the ball with 5.3 seconds left. It's tie game. They can win the game here. It's a huge inbounds play. I don't know what happened here. Kevin Durant seemed to fall. Sengun still threw it in.
There's a little bit of a pull, but not a ton.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, and then Sengun fouls him with 1.7 seconds left, Anthony Black misses the free throw. And then boy, I mean, they make a huge mistake on the switch here with Sengun. He's got super deep positioning with 1.3, 1.7, whatever it was left. And he ties the game to force overtime. Just an incredible series of plays all around. Like I just was stunned how that happened. The Rockets seemed to win the game, then had a chance to win it, then blew it, and then they force overtime.
Remind me, who was the inbounder on the Sengun tying bucket?
Amen was.
I want to talk about Amen, and we'll get to him in a few minutes because it wasn't all positive, but I thought that was a really heady play because I think where some of the confusion came into play for the Magic, everybody in the building was expecting the Rockets and most likely Kevin Durant to attempt a walk-off 3. Like the Rockets had, their tanks were on empty. And I think we saw that in overtime when, Sengun had to do so much of the heavy lifting late in the game. There were a couple of little hooks that he left short in overtime. I think it's because he just didn't have the juice, and it's understandable. I mean, we're not even a month into the season, Dave. Like, it feels like, the Rockets have been, pedal to the metal for some time, but they're 9-3. They're just 12 games in out of 82. And perhaps, they only played 8 guys tonight because the injuries are piling up. So fortunately in overtime, KD was able to get them to the finish line because it looked like Shingun's tank was running on empty. But in regulation, I think there's so much of a tendency down 2 in that spot, and especially if you have Kevin Durant and Jabari, as you mentioned, hit a big 3 as well. I think so many people in the building, including the Magic, were expecting the Rockets to go for a 3 to just end it one way or another right there. That even though Sengun had position, they botched the switch. I don't think anyone was really expecting the Rockets to go for a 2 right there. I think to some extent the Rockets' willingness to do that caught the Magic by surprise. And I give a lot of credit to Amen, because I would bet a lot of money that the play that was drawn up, they had a couple of shooters coming around curls, and that would have been, option A or option B. I would guess that Sengun inside, I don't know if it was option C, but I would bet it's not option A. It's just happened to be like that was the best read, and Amen adjusted on the fly. So, I thought, like, for the game as a whole, like we texted during the game, I honestly thought the biggest disappointment from a half-court offense perspective was Amen Thompson, not in the way
100%.
that a lot of people think. There's been so much made, this constant referendum of, is Amen Thompson a point guard? I mean, he had no turnovers the other night. He had 1 turnover tonight. It wasn't like he was making, terrible decisions or getting picked. No, he didn't finish well enough. For the season, going into tonight, he was at 54.5% true shooting. That's down from over 60% last year. Tonight, I'm going to guess he's in his season-long number is now about 53 point something. That's my guess. The stats haven't updated yet. So, it's a small sample. It's just 12 out of 82, but he needs to be better. Like, the Rockets went into the season, and not just them, like all of us, we talked about them having a big 3. And to this point, there's been a few games where it's been a big 3, but for the balance of the season, it's been more like a clear top 2, the 2 all-stars from last year, Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun, and then Amen Thompson, certainly a very good player, still very valuable. And there have been some individual games where he's looked like that 3rd star level talent, but he hasn't done it consistently. And so when you see the Magic, when you see a team defend the Rockets the way the Magic did tonight, if they're not going to send doubles to where the Rockets are easily getting off 3s, then you need to have a men's ability to get right to the rim to sort of unlock more levels to your offense. And for whatever reason, he just wasn't able to do that tonight. Now, to his credit, and this is what makes me, besides the obvious caveats, it's year 3, he's 22 years old, it's the first month of the season. Like, all of these are obvious caveats. But beyond that, even though Amen is relatively struggling, look, he still had 10 rebounds tonight. He made that great pass at the end of the game that we were just talking about. So the effort is still there. And he also closed out the game in overtime by making the 2 free throws with 2 seconds left to put the game away. So it's not like the focus isn't there. He's very much still trying. It's just, for one reason or another, he's not converting at an efficient enough rate for him to be the 3rd star that we want him to be, at least not yet. So, high level takeaway, that's sort of the area of concern for me. But, the silver lining, it's not affecting his effort. And even though on the balance of the game, Amen wasn't great, he did make some big plays down the stretch with rebounds, the pass, the assist, that is, to set up the game-tying Sengun bucket, and then the 2 free throws in overtime to put it away.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping my eyes on Amen Thompson, because I know tonight he started 0 for 5, wasn't super effective. You're including him in this big 3, so to speak, and we need to see a little bit more. Just to you've already kind of covered that nicely, but he has so much potential. You see it in some of the big time plays that he makes, the rim pressure and attacking the basket. So, yeah, we just need to see a little bit more out of him. And it wasn't a good offensive night for anybody really, other than Kevin Durant and maybe Reed Shepherd. As far as efficiency wise, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Sengun, ended up with certainly 30 points tonight, big numbers. But as far as efficiency, it was really those 2 guys, unless I missed somebody.
Yeah.
Aaron Holiday came in and hit a couple of shots.
And to close the loop on the turnover at the end of regulation, I really think what we're seeing more of late in these close games, Sengun and KD know that right now they are the clear top 2. They are the engines. And so I think, it was a combination of KD fell. Maybe there was a little bit of a grab. Sengun would have liked to have pulled back, but he was already about to, inbound the ball when
Yeah.
KD started to go down. So it was too late to pull back, and it happened too quickly for Ime to call timeout from the bench. So sort of a perfect storm of circumstances. But the bottom line, I think the reason the Rockets erred in that direction is they wanted that game to be decided by Kevin Durant or Alperen Sengun. And since Sengun was the inbounds guy, then obviously he's going to try to get the ball to KD. So it sucks how it turned out, but I can understand the thought process because, the stuff about do the Rockets have a point guard? And I thought, especially in the first half, there were some encouraging things from Reed Shepherd that he can build on. But down the stretch of a game, it's going to be Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun. So this whole question of who's the point guard, how good are they? I said it before, that's a first 43 minutes problem. The last 5 minutes in a game like this, it's going to be Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun initiating the offense themselves. It almost went horribly wrong for a brief moment. It did tonight, but on the balance, you can't argue with the result.
Yeah, it was, as watching that game, it was in slow motion to me. Excuse me, that final play or close to the final play of regulation. It kind of just the whole thing. It looked like a dramatic movie. KD falling, it kind of slipping out of his hands, almost bouncing right into the hands of a running Orlando player. And then the foul by Sengun. You're like, what in the world? They really escaped with this one. And it's nice to know that the team, when the offense isn't clicking as it has been all season, can still, win these games in the mud, as Kevin Durant said. So one thing I want to say,
real quick, I do give Sengun credit for hustling back. Now, they got lucky that Black missed the free throw, but if Sengun doesn't hustle back, if he lets Black just go to the rim, Black can basically take his time and effectively hit a walk-off. Like, he can lay it up, and, we saw with the shot that Sengun hit, there was 0.2 left. It easily could have been 0.4 or 0.5, but fortunately the ball sort of, hit the net a couple of times before it went all the way through. So even though the foul was frustrating, I do respect Sengun. I mean, number one, you should always hustle. But secondly, the hustle did have a reward because it gave the Rockets that 1.7 or 1.4 or whatever it was so that they could actually get off a shot at tying the game, and one that they ultimately made.
Boy, Anthony Black missing that free throw. He's going to be thinking that was Nick Anderson-esque right there. Yeah. Orlando of all teams too, right? So, Reed Shepherd had a really good game. I thought overall he did have a little bit of an issue where Desmond Bane defended a shot by Reed Shepherd. Bane came down hard on the block, got him across the forehead. And then Bane kind of barked at him as Reed had fell on the floor, and Reed definitely stuck out his leg to trip Bane going back. They reviewed it, called it a flagrant. I don't know if they'll do anything further than that.
Oh, no.
But yeah. I'm with you. I doubt it as well. But Reed tonight, 7 boards, had 16 points, was efficient, hit 2 of 4 from long range, 6 of 11 from the field. Good game for Reed, and he came in and hit clutch free throws at the end of overtime. He's only shot. I think he'd only shot like 7 free throws in this season, and he comes in and hits those.
Yeah, I thought it was really telling, by the way, that Kevin Durant had the ball when the Rockets were up 1. They went with Ime Udoka's trusted strategy of fouling up 3, and it worked out. They didn't always do that last year. They did tonight, to their credit. And KD got the ball when they were up 1 with 8 seconds, and he could have easily held it and just waited for the foul, but he gave it to Reed, which was beneficial because they were able to dribble off about half the clock. But secondly, that took a lot of trust. Even though Reed's a really good shooter, which they know, look, it's a young guy who's just 21 years old in his second season. To send him to the line in that situation, it's not easy. As you said, just ask Nick Anderson. Those free throws get a lot more difficult when there's those types of stakes. Mm-hmm. And so for Reed to be able to step up, and I don't think either of them even hit the rim, total trust from Ime Udoka to put him out there, Kevin Durant to give him the ball. And you look at the plus minus, Reed was plus 19. That is ridiculous. 29 minutes played, 16 points, 7 rebounds, couple of assists, plus 19. Yeah. I thought, and Aaron Holiday, who was the 8th man in an increasingly tight Rockets rotation with all the injuries, I thought he had a couple of big threes tonight. And those minutes with Reed Shepherd and Aaron Holiday, you have to play a little bit of zone. You have to do some creative things defensively at times. But with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun, you have size, you have flexibility. I thought those bench units, given what the Rockets are missing at the moment, were about as good as you could hope for. Even on a night that, Steven Adams struggled tonight. He had 13 boards, but he was just 1 of 8. Like, the bucket
especially
he
in the
had in
first
overtime
half.
was the only one he made the entire game. So I
Yeah.
think Steven will be the first to tell you that he should have been a lot better. But aside from that, like, the bench units were some of their best. And so I give a ton of credit to Reed Shepherd because obviously Steven didn't play well. So, he gives you a high floor. We've talked about that, but it wasn't Steven's best game. And so for the bench units to sort of get you back in the game, it felt like every time the Magic would get some separation, bump it back to 8, 9, 10 points, the Rockets would get it back down to 3 or 4, a little bit like that Milwaukee game. And, the finish was not as pretty as the Milwaukee game, and that the Magic made you grind it out a little bit more in the half court, but sort of the same theme in that, for a lot of the game, bouncing back between, maybe a 3-4 point game and a 9, 10, 11 point game. But, the bench led by Reed Shepherd kept you close. And then at the very end, just like the Milwaukee game, Durant and Sengun had enough to get you to the finish line.
Yeah. It's, and Reed, to your point about Reed, I always try to be a little bit more cautious. I don't want to overstate things or anything like that. But he had a couple plays tonight, at least one that I can think of right off the top of my head, where he drove basically right, stepped back off the 3 line, and just drained a triple. It did look Steph Curry-like, to be totally honest. He showed the Jets a couple of times. We had that chase down block by Kevin Durant, and Reed took the rebound and just bolted the length of the floor and got a layup in over traffic. Like I said, I'd rather be late than overstate, but I do think there's a lot of promising things to look at with Reed Shepherd. And if he ends up having that point guard projection hit, you're in business because this guy can shoot flat out. He can shoot.
And by the way, one more note on that end of regulation sequence. I thought it was classic ball don't lie for Kevin Durant to hit that 3 over Wendell Carter Jr. because I still do not know how Wendell Carter did not foul out on what was his 6th foul, would have sent Amen Thompson to the line to put the Rockets in front with a couple of minutes left, got overturned. Next thing you know, the Magic are up 3 again. I don't know. Insert Scott Foster comment here. There's a lot of them in the chat, but I know he initially got ball, but my God, he got a ton of arm and hand. Like, even if you get ball, you can't then just crush the guy. Like, we'll see what the last 2-minute report says. I'm very curious. I'm also, we were talking offline before we started recording. I'm also sort of curious to see what happens with the steal that Anthony Black had, or I don't think Black had the steal, but the go-ahead layup with a couple of seconds left, because there was a little bit of a hand on KD's jersey, and it was very reminiscent of for anyone in the chat that saw the Milwaukee-Dallas game last week, Milwaukee got a steal and transition bucket in the last minute on a play very similar to that, where they got a fistful of Cooper Flagg's jersey, and they didn't call it, but the next day on the last 2-minute report, they said it should have been called because of the hand on the jersey. So we'll see, but unlike previous Scott Foster games in that same building, fortunately, these Rockets with Kevin Durant, I guess the biggest takeaway, Dave, the Rockets did not have enough to overcome Scott Foster and Kevin Durant. But if Kevin Durant is on their side, they can overcome Scott Foster.
Good point. Yeah, I swear every time I see Scott Foster say something on, when he's going to announce what they've concluded on replay, you can feel the anger. There's so much history there. Let's talk about the end of overtime. Jabari had a very, very big block of Franz Wagner that was key. Huge. That set up Kevin Durant to basically ice the game. It wasn't 100% over. Like I said, Reed had to hit those free throws. Rockets had to foul and watch Orlando shoot some free throws from there too. But Kevin Durant hitting this shot again, this is another just closer moment. He had several big shots like this in this game. Just really, really nice. And there were some highlights in there of Sengun. I didn't have all the highlights for use in here. Sengun had there was a play where he must have missed like 4 shots, but he got the offensive rebound every single time and then went kind of behind the back, bounced past to Adams to that basket that you made. It was a beautiful play. Go ahead.
I think those two have a really good feel for one another already. Like, certainly the X's and O's and understanding who has the better matchup on a given possession. Like, it speaks volumes. I heard Tim McMahon say this on one of ESPN's recent pods, but just the fact that Durant is willing to be deferential to Alperen Sengun says so much about where Alperen is as a player. And no one should be pointing out, he shot 31 times tonight. Well, he sort of had to, Dave. Look at how the Magic chose to defend the Rockets. I mean, if he didn't take some of those shots, especially on a night where Amen Thompson is struggling, where are the points going to come from? A lot of those were shots were late in the clock. He had to put something up. So no, I don't blame Sengun for the efficiency. You'd like to see a few more go in, but I don't blame him for the volume, I should say. But I think a lot of what happened in overtime, I mentioned this earlier, but the Rockets had to lean on Sengun so much down the stretch of regulation and early in overtime because it felt like he had a lot of the more advantaged matchups relative to KD, that I thought his tank was running on empty. And that's where, with about, I want to say a minute 20 left, Sengun had a couple of really good looks, hook shots within 5 feet that he front rimmed. And to me, that's a sign that he's a little bit tired. And so I think KD and Sengun, beyond just being able to read the floor and see who has the better matchup on a possession, I also think there's a little bit of back and forth between, hey, who has a little more juice at a given moment? And I think late in overtime, Sengun didn't necessarily have it offensively after what he had already done. So the Rockets needed KD to then pick up the slack, and he did. And it goes both ways. Like, there were certainly moments late in regulation where, KD hit some big shots, and then the Rockets, for one reason or another, needed to go to Sengun. And so they sort of have a good yin and yang to them in terms of they understand what the other needs. And I think for a partnership that's just 12 games in the making, it's really promising.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to say I was impressed with Wendell Carter Jr. in this game, although he did make a few low IQ plays,
attempting to out, even if they didn't call it.
Right. Well, you're talking about the one where he attempted to block Amen, but just even attempting with 1 second left of the shot clock, and
he played really well.
Amen's doing a full speed fadeaway. I was like, what are you thinking there? But for them mentioning on the broadcast, I hadn't even done my research. Carter shooting over 44% from three. I don't know what the deal is with bigs. There are several of them that have, Sengun being one of them, that have suddenly just become snipers. And Carter hit 2 of 4 from three tonight. Like I said, I don't know if that continues for him, but I thought he was pretty good. Tristan da Silva is, I believe, a rookie and is doing quite well for that. I thought he was fairly solid as well tonight. They're missing Suggs. They're missing Paolo. Rockets missing, obviously, Dorian Finney-Smith, missing Tari Eason. Of course, they're going to miss Fred all year. So I'm not going to feel sorry for them, but still, that was an impressive showing for them to come into Houston and I think take them that far.
Yeah, absolutely. They led for 99% of the game. Yeah.
And there's not going to be a dull moment the next 4 games here. I mean, we got Cleveland, I believe, on Wednesday, and that's a team that Sengun usually does pretty well, at least has for the last couple of games. I would say some bigs that just don't have a whole lot of sand in their pants to defend Sengun as far as post work, and that's Mobley and Allen. Then you're going to have the Nuggets in cup action.
Huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I don't know if it's the biggest game, but the Suns they've been a little surprising, and we're going to see Dylan Brooks
flagrant incoming. We know it
without question. He'll be on KD. That's going to be, I think, the 24th Monday, and then you've got Rockets Warriors in cup action. So the 2 cup games that are remaining, both extremely tough. You got the Nuggets here in Houston, and then you're going to go on the road to play the Warriors. Going to be great to see. The Warriors now. There are so many narratives and so many storylines. I can't wait for that game. In particular, but this was I didn't expect it. I thought the Rockets would roll tonight. A very, very good game. A lot of very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I worried a little bit more about it than you probably did, simply because going in, they had won 8 of 9, now 9 of 10. But when you put together a run like this, there can be a letdown game, especially with a difficult schedule coming up. The Magic without Paolo or one were at home, wrapping up a homestand. It's come so easily of late. It's not easy to reel off a 9 of 10 stretch against anybody. So I just sort of had a feeling this would be a little more competitive. And then, as the game played out, we saw the Magic had some matchup advantages with the size they have on that front line and the physicality, the Rockets not being able to, bludgeon them the way they can most teams. And that's why, we'll talk more in future episodes, I'm sure, about the impact of, no Tari Eason. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with what turned out to be an oblique strain. It could be that's a huge deal, but I don't want to overreact based on one game, because I do think, even counting overtime, the Rockets had only 23s tonight. Like, I think the way that the Magic were able to single cover Sengun and KD for a lot of that game and their willingness to stick with it, and also Steven missing a lot of bunnies near the rim that might have made them think twice a little bit about some of those coverages. I don't think that's going to happen every night. The the teams you have coming up, they're more explosive offensively, but I don't think they have the same personnel defensively. So I think once the Rockets have more size and the physicality can take a little bit more of a toll, then you'll certainly miss Tari. I mean, he's very long. We know how well he was shooting threes this year, but I do think that this game, while not encouraging, if you look at it just at face value, I do think there's some extenuating circumstances tonight. I sort of understand it being a letdown game. And, I guess the way I would frame it, I have a watchful eye on the Tari situation and however long it is until Dorian Finney-Smith comes back. Like, it's certainly not nothing, but is it as crippling as it might have looked when, you look up midway through tonight's game and you're down 10 to an Orlando team that you feel like you should beat? I don't know. I think there's a lot of things going on. So the impact of losing Tari, we'll see, but we need a bigger sample to really flush that out. And one other comment from the chat I want to address. Yeah, the crowd at Toyota Center tonight was electric. That's one of the best crowds I've seen in a long time in Houston. And, we know this is a crowd that's, at times in recent seasons. Now, some of that I think is circumstantial based on the teams not being so good. And even when the team picks it up, as they did last year, sometimes it takes, an extra year or two for the fan base to get back into habits of, buying all the tickets, showing up, being loud the way you are when you have a contender. It doesn't always happen from a fan environment standpoint. It's not like flipping a switch. But this season, it's been a lot better. I think the Kevin Durant effect, second year of being, a top shelf team in the Western Conference, that helps. But also, we talked to Gretchen Shearer a few weeks ago on our YouTube channel at ClutchFans, and I know the Rockets behind the scenes have really been making some efforts to make sure more of those lower bowl seats are filled. They're getting creative. It was Kevin Durant bobblehead night tonight, by the way, which, Jackson Gatlin over at Locked On Rockets said that people were lined up as early as 1 p.m. for a 6 p.m. tip-off. So it's not one reason, but the bottom line is the fan environment was so much better tonight. I thought it absolutely made a difference down the stretch and in overtime. And, kudos to the fans and kudos to the Rockets as an organization for doing what it takes to build a little bit more of a home court advantage, because I think the Rockets clearly enjoyed that tonight.
Yeah, and if you haven't been for a while, I highly recommend. Not you, obviously, Ben. You go all the time, but I'm saying to the audience. I mean, if you haven't been, go to the Toyota Center. Go watch a game. I mean, it's fun to watch them online. Or on TV. I get that, but it's such a great experience. And like I said this to Gretchen as well. You don't have to be this diehard fan. Of course, if you're watching this show, you are. But you don't have to be to truly enjoy it. It's such a great experience. And with this season and this team, it's a must-have ticket. So, to your point, we'll close now, but just Okogie, 22 minutes, no shots. So it's basically indicates that they really were not able to find a lot of open shooters tonight, and like only 23s. That was notable throughout. Only three in the first quarter. So, Ben, appreciate you doing this. Thank you, everybody, all the support. It's a huge audience tonight. Appreciate all of you guys and everybody. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already to get notifications when we go live. And we will see y'all Wednesday. Have a great night.
Clutch City.